On what seemed like a typical day in December of 2002, an NBC News investigative producer received a letter that would change his life. It was from an inmate serving 25 years to life at a maximum security prison in upstate New York for a murder he says he did not commit. NBC's Lester Holt has the story.
The Sing Sing Correctional Facility houses more than 1,400 prisoners. Each can tell you why they are here.
Dear Mr. Slepian, I spent a lot of time trying.
Some will tell you why they shouldn't be.
I know I don't belong here, but I am a firm believer that everything that happens to us in life is for a purpose.
It was a single letter addressed to Dateline NBC producer Dan Slepian, sent by John Adrian JJ Velasquez, who was serving a life sentence for the murder of a retired police officer, convicted solely on eyewitness testimony. Dozens more would follow. Skeptical but curious, Dan paid JJ a visit.
The 12 jurors said you're here for a reason. You should be locked up because you committed murder.
That's what they gathered, but they didn't know the whole story, and neither did I at that time.
And there began a 20-year journey. JJ's unbending claim of innocence, Dan's search for the truth, detailed now in the new NBC Studios podcast, Letters from Sing Sing.
What I've learned over the past 2 decades haunts me.
JJ gave Dan mountains of case documents and challenged him to prove him guilty. Dan tracked down the key eyewitness. He told Dan he was pressured by police and basically picked out JJ at random after looking at more than 1,800 mugshots.
I don't know if I really picked out the right person.
20-plus years in, Dan is still unearthing bombshells, recently interviewing a juror in the case.
In my heart of hearts, I knew he was innocent.
The jury had been sequestered for 3 days, and she told Dan she only voted guilty because of peer pressure.
What you're essentially saying to me is that JJ was convicted not necessarily because of the facts or the evidence, but because the jury was tired and wanted to go home. Is that true?
I'd have to say yes. I think that's the truth, yes.
In 2021, with the help of Dan, JJ was granted clemency by former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The story is now told in the first ever original podcast series produced by NBC News Studios titled Letters from Sing Sing. And Dan and JJ join us now. Guys, good morning. It's great to have you here. So, JJ, I'm looking at a number here, 23 years, 8 months, 7 days that you spent at Sing Sing for a crime you say you did not commit. I'm also looking at the case against you. No physical evidence, no forensic evidence, an alibi. Your mother, your then girlfriend say you were home at the time of the shooting, all based on what we now know is pretty flimsy eyewitness accounts. How did they convict you in the first place when you look back at it?
Well, that's a question that we're still trying to figure out. Like, in terms of how they convicted me, they created a story, and they had all their witnesses aligned with that story. And even when that occurred, you had a juror that came into the courtroom, was testifying, saying that she knew it was me all the time, didn't pick me at the lineup, and then she was asked to select me in the courtroom, and she selected a juror.
So you have almost 24 years of your life taken from you. What was it like as you sat up at Sing Sing, knowing you didn't do this, and trying to say, how can I appeal this? How can I get out of here? How can I prove that I didn't do this?
It was a very difficult situation. Very hard to fathom, very hard to deal with and live with. But the reality is that, you know, no matter what we go through in life, when we have a purpose and when we have people that we love, that believe in us and that we want to get back to, we will survive whatever we go through.
And what prompted you to send Dan that letter?
Hope, really. A friend of mine was being interviewed. Dan Slepian was interviewing David Lemus in another homicide, a wrongful conviction at the Palladium that occurred in 1990. And based on the relationship that was being developed between both David and Dan, I decided to give it a shot and see if he would listen.
So, Dan, you have taken a close, very close look over 20 years at all the evidence. You've shed new light on this case. Is there any doubt in your mind, knowing everything you know, that JJ is innocent of the crime?
That quick answer is no, but what I would encourage everyone to do now that all of these episodes are available is to listen for themselves, because it's not a question of whether he's innocent or not. This is a cup of water. It's not an elephant. And so when people download this podcast, Letters from Sing Sing, and they listen to all the episodes, they are going to come to their own conclusion. No one needs to believe me. The facts are what they are. And that's why this is so much bigger than just JJ Velasquez. This is about all of us. This is about a system that needs to acknowledge truth, acknowledge facts. And when they don't, all of us are in danger.
So this podcast comes out against the backdrop of a raging debate in the country about law and order, about policing, defund the police, about rising crime rates and the like. And it's clear that you've got some bad actors in this story. What have you learned? What are you trying to say? You just said facts are facts, right? It's kind of abstract, but it's against the backdrop of this debate. What are you trying to say about policing and criminal justice in this country?
It's a very insightful question, and it's a very nuanced answer that we don't have the time for. But what I can tell you is the narrative that exists in society about people who are incarcerated is incorrect. There are not prisons full of Jeffrey Dahmers and Ted Bundys. There are prisons full of people who made mistakes when they were young people that have grown, they have been educated. They're not all innocent like JJ, but what JJ did for me as an innocent person is open the door into the humanity that exists inside of prisons and mass incarceration. For people like JJ who are innocent, it's just hell. I mean, at least if you did your crime, there's at least a reason you're there. But to live in a cage for 23 years, 7 months and 8 days for something that you provably did not do, and no one in power is doing anything about it, right, it's astonishing to me.
So that takes me to the question I want to ask you, Brother JJ. Sure. You talked about hope. Dan talked about humanity. How did you keep hate from taking root in your spirit? That's really a good question. I honestly didn't know hate until I was incarcerated. I didn't learn about hate until I got caught in the system. But I knew that hate would take over my humanity if I allowed it to thrive inside of me. So I had to fight back. And that's not just for me, that's for the people that I love and the people that believe in me. And it's for the overall betterment of society. You know, individuals that are wrongfully convicted coming home bitter doesn't serve a purpose in this world. But coming home and sharing our stories and sharing our realities so that we can put an end to this, or at least diminish the aspect of it continuing to occur on the level that it does, I think that that's much more important than thriving on hate, right? I think love is the solution.
And that's what he taught me. 20 years. I've met JJ December 5th, 2002. It's now 2023. And I have learned more from him and gotten more from him than he has ever gotten from me.
So, JJ, we mentioned in the summer of 2021, you received clemency from the New York governor. Here's the moment when JJ got that news.
You being transferred?
Where?
You don't know?
No.
You know where 50 Overlook Road is in Haverstraw, New York?
Absolutely.
That's where you're going, bro.
Thank you, man.
That's where you're going. God bless you. You deserve it.
Hello? Jacob, what's up? I got a surprise for you. You know, for 23 years, I've been telling you that I'm going to come home one day, right? Well, now I can officially tell you. Cuomo granted me clemency, and I'm coming home next month. You all right? That is the best birthday gift in the world, huh? Your birthday's tomorrow. Happy birthday, my son.
JJ, tell us who you're talking to there and what you were going through in that moment.
I was actually speaking to both of my sons. My oldest son's birthday is August 18th, and so I was informed of that in real time while Dan was present on August 17th, which was just a day before. And so I think it was the best gift that I could finally give my son, to know that I'm finally coming home. When I left him at 3, I left my youngest at 5 weeks.
Wow, 5 weeks, so you missed 24 years of their lives. How has it been catching up?
I love every minute of it, but at the same token, it comes with its struggles.
Yeah.
We're trying to reestablish a relationship that's supposed to be a father and son relationship when we were separated for a quarter of a century, you know, pretty much his entire life or their entire lives. So getting to know each other is, it's a great process, but I wish it could have happened a lot quicker, you know.
I met JJ when his kids were 8 and 5, and now they're 28 and 25. And they have kids of their own. JJ's a grandfather now. Yeah. I've seen them grow up. JJ used to write me letters when his oldest son was 12 years old saying, I'm scared for my son, that I'm not home. And he predicted the future. And I mean, here's a guy also that I just want to point out that went to the White House last fall, was invited to the White House and publicly had an apology from the President of the United States for what he'd been through. Yet he needed a piece of paper from his parole officer in New York to get to D.C. to get that apology.
We're looking at that video right now of you with President Biden. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope it impacts
Thank you for having me.
Cases down the road. And Dan, thank you for bringing it to us. All 7 episodes of Letters from Sing Sing available to stream now, wherever you get your podcasts, and well worth the listen. Dan Slepian, JJ Velasquez, thank you both.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back.